Some are more important than others, but I'm going to show you the bare essentials, mainly because those are the only symbols I know. If you run into something that I try to explain in my rather rudimentary fashion, maybe you got a friend who accompanies a church choir. I guarantee you they can read music, or any friend that can read some music, and they can help you deal with some of these symbols pretty easily. It's a little more hard for me because I barely understand them myself. The exception to that is the timing of notes, because there are like eighth notes and 16th notes and quarter notes and half notes and whole notes. There are short rests and long rests, etc. And when I run into those and I'm not sure how I'm supposed to time the notes, I simply go back to the music that I heard on tape or disc or whatever. And I listen to it, not so much for the notes, because I already know those. I've memorized that either from having sheet music or from listening, but we're talking about sheet music here, so I can't figure out from the sheet music what the timing is. I listen to the song, and I'm really listening only for the timing. And if I have to listen to it 10 times to get the timing right, I'll do that. And then when I'm finished and I've got the timing down in my head, I can say to hell with the music. I don't need the music, and I don't need all these musical symbols to count the song out. And I'm going to show you how to count songs. I have 2 pages of symbols. The first one starts out as you might expect. Here's the first page. This is actually not digitally enhanced. This is digitally created. I didn't copy it from anything. And let's just walk through it because you should have a fairly decent handle on some of this. Particularly, this is the treble clef because of this massive curlicue. It has 1 flat, it's on the B line, which tells you that just because there's 1 flat, you know you're in the key of F. So that's the chord you would start with if you were starting on the tonic, which is F. Now this, of course, is the 4/4. I want you to notice that there's a huge difference in these two. And that is that 4/4 time is up here, and this one, look at, is 3/4 time. So this also, these vertical lines, those denote what are called measures. And this bottom 4 tells you that a quarter note, and this is a quarter note, gets 1 beat. It also tells you that there are 4 beats in every measure, from here to here, here to here, here to here, see the verticals, and to there. This 4 tells you that there are 4 beats in that measure. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. Maybe that gives some sense to this, because this is a whole note. It's a white note, it has no tail, has nothing, it's just sitting there. That gets all of the beats that are allowed in this measure, 4 of them. So when you see this, you have to hold that note, in this case an F, and you hold it down for 4 beats. 1, 2, 3, 4. Then you move to this. This measure, and this is not a song, so these notes have no relationship to any music. They're just, actually I used a scale on this. Black notes with a tail and nothing else are called quarter notes. And like I said here, this circle here told you that a quarter note gets one beat. So you know that each one of these you count as one. So here, this was all four of the beats in that measure. Now you get to this measure and you play very separately 1, 2, 3, 4. And that's what a quarter note is about. And that's what the 4/4 is about. Here, I probably should have started explaining a half note. This is a half note, which is 2 beats. So you have 1, 2, 3, 4. And that's a white note with a tail. And then a white note with a tail and a dot next to it is called a dotted half note. It gets 3 beats. So when you get to this measure, you get 1, 2, 3, 4. That's a quarter note. It gets 1 beat. 3 plus 1 is 4. Pretty good math, huh? This one's even easier. 2 beats, 2 beats. 2 plus 2 is 4. Can I make this any easier? So to count this whole thing, and remember you're in the key of F. So right here, when you got to this quarter note, this is E, F, G. What did I do wrong here? F, G. Oh, this is the B. So it's F, G, A, B. That's flatted. It doesn't say it here, but it tells you that here. Okay? So that's flatted B, C, D, E, and then 2 half notes. So here's how you would count that, those 4 measures of the beginning of whatever song it is. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Pretty easy. I know it's a surprise, but it shouldn't be a shock. And you're not really learning a whole lot. I mean, you don't have to be a rocket scientist to know that this is 4, these are 1, this is 3, this is 1, this is 2, and this is 2, regardless of what the song is. Now we go down to the G scale, or I'm sorry, the 3/4 time song. 90% of the songs you will encounter are going to be in 4/4 time. Oh, why are there 2 lines at the beginning? At the very beginning of a song, or at the very end of a song, that's the one place you will find 2. It's a double vertical line. And it's the 2 lines that tell you this is the beginning, or in some cases, or in all cases, could be the end. It's the second line that is the first line of this measure. So the fact that this has 4 beats, the measure starts here and ends here, that tells you that this very first note is played on the very first beat of the song. And there'll be more on this later. So basically what I've verbally done is show you what a measure is, from this vertical line to this vertical line. That's a measure, this is a measure, this is a measure, this is a measure. How many beats each one of these types of notes gets: 4, 1 each, 3 by itself, 1 here, 2 for this note, and 2 for this note. And when it gets more than 1 beat, you're holding the key down for all those beats. You don't just hit this and pray. You hold that D on the keyboard for 3 beats. 1, 2, 3. And I'll demonstrate this on the piano in a little while. The bottom staff, again, it's using the same types of notes. It's still, obviously, everything is the treble clef in my world, and it will be in yours. The big difference is twofold. Instead of being in B flat, which is 1 flat, the key of F, this is in the key of G, meaning it has 1 sharp, and it's F sharp, and that's how it's shown, right after the treble sign. So you know since it's 1 sharp, it has to be the key of G, and it has to be F sharp. But then the biggest change is this, is 3, 4. This 4 tells you, just like up here, that a quarter note gets 1 beat. And this 3 tells you that there are 3 beats in a measure instead of 4, which is what you had up here. And 3/4 time is what is commonly called waltz time. So, before I was rudely interrupted by an angry camera, I was explaining waltz time. And because after you are on your own, I want you to learn the simplest of songs. You may encounter a lot more waltz time, 3/4 time. That's this. Because the simplest of songs frequently are in waltz time. Like I said, this 4 means that a quarter note gets 1 beat, and this 3 means there are 3 beats in a measure. So we find that where are the measures? Well, here's the double line that tells you we're at the beginning of the song. Here's a treble clef that tells you we're in the key of G and that it's waltz time. So the measures start here and go to here is the first measure. This is the second measure. This is the third measure, and I didn't finish that one. So that's just a sample of an 8th note. So there's really 3 measures on this particular treble clef. The first note is a dotted half note, which means it gets 3 beats. Since there are 3 beats in a measure, we know that you hit this key at the very beginning on the count of 1 of the first measure. And you know, if you're worried about your intellect, the only thing you have to count to, you only have to count to 4 up here, over and over and over again. And you count to 3 down here, over and over and over again. So this is 3 beats. It fills this entire measure because that's how many beats there are in this measure. So you know that you hit it on the count of 1 and you hold it all the way through the count of 3. So it's 1, 2, 3. Now, a waltz time, and if you think about it, I'll show it on the piano much later. Again, this is not music, it's not a song. I just picked the notes at random. So the second measure is supposed to have 3 beats, and sure enough, a quarter note gets 1 beat, and there's 3 of them in that measure. Here, a half note gets 2 beats, quarter note gets 1, 2 and 1 is 3. That's how many beats belong in that measure. Forget that. So you would count this. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. And that's waltz time. And I'm sure you recognize it if you think of any waltz that you know, and there are thousands of them, and especially if the word waltz is in the name. For example, the Tennessee Waltz, I think there's a Missouri Waltz. There's probably a waltz named after every state in the Union. All of them will be counted in 3/4 time. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. And so that's how you do 3/4 time. And that's about as much explanation as I can come up with on that until I show it to you on the piano, which I will. And just to show you how incredibly complicated written music can be, this is a quarter note. If it looks like a quarter note, but it's got a flag or a tail on it sticking out here, it's no longer a quarter note, it's an eighth note. That means it gets 1/2 of a beat. So there would have to be 2 of them played separately to equal 1 of these. If you were in 4/4 time, it would take, if each note was separate, it would take 8 of these to fill 1 measure. Where here we have 1 note filling the whole measure, it would take 8 of these little guys. Because these are quarter notes and it takes 4 of them. Then they also have 16th notes, which have 2 flags, and God forbid, they probably have 32nd notes, but I gave up reading music so long ago, I don't remember if there is such a thing. But if they have a flag here, they're much shorter played, the time. Hopefully you won't you'll encounter plenty of these guys, the 8th notes, but hopefully you won't see too many 16ths, and hopefully you'll never see a 32nd. I wouldn't know how to deal with it if I encountered one. And that's how you count notes. That's what these different shapes and colors mean. White, black, tail, white with dot. That's about it. And this is white without tail. This is white with tail. 2 beats, 4 beats. Now, music is not non-stop notes. There are places where you don't play any notes. And I have a digitally created visual aid. I love those words. Showing when you don't play notes. So, and I didn't bother with 4/4 time, 4 beats in the measure, or 3 beats in the measure, because life is complicated enough, especially when you throw these guys in. But take any, let's use 3/4 time, waltz time, and you're playing 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. And there may be a note for 1, 2, and 3, 1, 2, and 3, and then there's a beat, but there's no note on the music. That, in that case, instead of having a note for that beat, there'll be this, and it's a 1 beat rest. That means there is no note that goes with it. So, in terms of fingering and playing, if each time I move one of these fingers, I'm playing a note on the piano. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. I'm not hitting a note. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, or could be 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, so on and so forth. Every place you encounter one of these, it has one beat because it's that weird shape, but there's no note to play. Your finger it's a moment of silence. That's a good word for it. And this is what that one beat looks like. If you were going to rest for 4 whole beats, which there will be music, there'll be times when you might have to count out the whole measure of 4 and never play a single note in that measure. And that is a solid rectangle box hanging from this, I believe it always hangs from the second line. If I could be wrong about that, it might hang from this line, but it is underneath one of the lines, and the music I was looking at had it under this line. So, but if it's a rectangular solid box, black, underneath a line, it's a 4-beat rest, the whole 4-beat measure. I don't know music well enough to tell you what a 3-beat rest looked like. I don't remember such a thing as a 3-beat rest. I don't think there's any such thing as a dotted rest, which is how you do a dotted note. That's how you get 3 beats on one note. It's a dotted half note. So I'm going to assume that if you're in 3/4 time, this same symbol is a 3-beat rest that wipes out that whole measure. And finally over here is a 2-beat rest. And what I was looking at showed it on the middle line, but it's on top of that line. It might be on top of these in other music that I haven't looked at. But for sure, if it's sitting on top of the line, it's identical to this, but it's on top of this line, then it counts for 2 beats. So if you were in 4/4 time and you saw one of these at the beginning, when you started counting the song, you would say 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. Because the first 2 beats of that measure were a rest. The first 2 beats of the song were a rest. And then the notes started on the 3rd beat. So that's how a 2-beat rest works, and that's what it looks like. And now we get to the worst of the worst. And remember I repeatedly talked about sharps and flats. Sharp and the tic-tac-toe is the sharp. The weird lowercase b is the flat. We talked about when it's at the beginning, it tells you what key you're in. In this case, we're not in that area. This is not at the beginning of a song. This is anywhere except at the beginning. When you encounter this, it is telling you that this specific G in the melody, right there in the music, you go up a half step just because it's sharp. So you play G sharp, which shows up as a black key on the big keyboard. And that's what that sharp means when it's not at the very beginning. It's not there to tell you what key you're in. It's not there to tell you what all the sharps are in that key. It's there to tell you that the composer wants this G in whatever song you're playing to be sharped. Now here's where life gets miserable, and you'll just have to live with it. And it's one of the things I hate about reading music, which is why I do so little of it. But I just do enough to have a tenoring circus playing by ear. When you see this and you play that, Every G, disregard these, every G, this exact same note on this line, whether it's a half note, whole note, or a quarter note, you also sharp it continuously until you come to that. And when you come to that, I don't know what to describe that as. I'll leave it up to you to come up with a nickname for it. That is called a natural. And when you encounter the natural, the composer is saying, okay, you sharped this G, you sharped the next 5 Gs, even though there was no sharp there, to tell you that. You just automatically sharp every G afterwards. Skip this, please. And now when you get to here, you don't sharp it anymore. It's back to the white G. See, this is the black G above white G. This G natural, I believe, will always be a white key. And this, so when you see this, you don't sharp that G anymore. You just go back to playing the white G continuously until you run into another one of these. I don't think you'll ever find any music where you find both sharps and flats shown. Any music you have to look at, all of the non-white keys will be either sharps through the whole song or they'll be flats through the whole song, but you won't see a mixture of them. So everything I just told you about this G applies to this one, except instead of playing G sharp, as you did here, on this one, you play G flat. That means you go to the black key immediately below the G. And you play that for that specific G, and then for every G that you see after that, until you come to one of these. There may be a half a dozen of them. That all of them are supposed to have the flat. But now, when we get to this point in the song, he doesn't want a flat anymore. He wants it a natural G, meaning the white key, and you'll see this symbol. Once you see that symbol, you play that as the white G, and you continue to play it that way until you encounter either another one of these or you get to the end of the song. Another thing you will never see is that where a song has, let's say it's the key of G and it has one sharp, which is the F key. You will never encounter a sheet of music that's in the key of G. Once it shows that F sharp at the very beginning, it's telling you to sharp all of them. You'll never see it sharped again until somewhere in the song you come to this. And all of a sudden it's saying, wait a minute, I'm in the key of G, I'm supposed to be playing F as a sharp, and now he's got this marked natural F. He wants me to play the white F. So you start playing the white F at that point, the natural one, and you keep playing that F as natural until you run into this, which is, you're back to what it was written in, which is with the F sharp. And once you see that, you continue playing F sharp every place you see an F, just like you started out at the beginning. Oh, okay. I've shown you the ones that I mostly know, and they are good enough for me, and I'm a muddler, and I get by with them, sometimes barely, when I'm reading the kind of music I'm ultimately going to show you. And actually, you saw it near the very beginning when you remember the sheet that had 3 staffs, 2 trebles, and a bass clef? And we essentially erased all the complicated treble clef and all the bass clef, and left only that treble clef at the top, which showed the exact same music and the chord symbols in a very, very simplified way. I assume also that you've now got enough symbols to last you for the rest of your life, as I certainly have had. And that leaves us with counting measures. The songs that I have chosen are designed to demonstrate 4/4 time, 3/4 time, or waltz time, how to try to figure out what beat a song starts on, and lastly are probably songs that are familiar to almost everyone, whether or not you're Irish. By absolute chance, as I sat at the piano trying to think, what's a simple song that I can use to demonstrate 4/4, 3/4, etc. And they all turned out either to be Irish songs with Irish in the title, or at the very least, they had a huge Irish connection. And as far as I know, I don't have a drop of Irish blood in me, but the music just fell into place that way. So with that, I'm going to have to pause this for a couple minutes to rearrange, because I'm done showing you these things. I will show you one more sheet about counting, and maybe you'll have a better idea of what it looks like on paper. And this is the paper. And not surprisingly, this is the beginning of the measure, it's the beginning of the song. It says first measure 3 beats because it's in 3/4 time. Obviously it's the treble clef. You remember the single rest, single beat rest? That's 1, there's 2. Up here, this is how you would count this off. You start out 1, 2, well, it's all 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, and there's 1, 2, 3, 4 measures. Each measure gets 3 beats. So from here to here is 3 beats. Well, there's only 1 note, but it happens to be the 3rd note on paper, but it's the 1st note of the music, the actual singing or playing type music. So you count it this way, 1, 2, I'll give you a couple measures that aren't shown to just count it. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, when Irish eyes are smiling. The first note of the song, the first note of the lyrics, the first note of the music is all on the 3rd beat. These 2 rests are shown here as 1, beat 1, beat 2, beat 3 is the first note, when. Then you get to the 2nd measure. There's 2 beats to this, 1 beat to this, that's 3, that's how many there's supposed to be. You get to this measure, there's 2 beats, 1 beat, that's 3. You get to this one, it's 1 beat, and then it actually is 2 beats in this measure, but it continues on, and when you see this, you'll see this note again, might be a 1/4 note or a 1/2 note, could be a whole note, no, it wouldn't be a whole note, it might be a dotted 1/2 note. But that means that's the same note. You don't hit the key of the piano again when you see this. But for our purposes, the most important thing is that there's 3 beats in this measure. So we'll do it slower. 1, 2, when Irish eyes, whoops, Irish eyes are smiling. Whoa. You see how good I am at reading music? This is an education. Let's try that again. When Irish Irish eyes are smiling. So, 2 rests, a quarter note in that measure, a half note and a quarter note, 3 beats, half note and a quarter beat, quarter note, 3 beats, quarter note and a half note, that line goes with that, and that's 3 beats. If you look up here at the words, that's the way they come out. When is quick, that's 2 beats, rish is 1, eyes is 2 beats, R is 1 beat, smy is 1 beat, ling is 2 beats. And that's how you count it again on paper. And now I have to reorganize, so we'll take a short break while I set the piano up so that you can see on the piano what I've been talking about. So I promised you 3 Irish songs on the piano to try to demonstrate 3/4 time, 4/4 time, and how you count both of them. Before I do that, I want to show you something I mentioned on a number of occasions. This is a full keyboard. Right here it says Baldwin, okay? Which is essentially dead center. Right here under the B and A in Baldwin is what is called middle C. And that's where all those scales start. The treble, the right hand scales start there. That's the C scale. The left hand starts here. And both hands start like this. So that's that. Now you know what middle C looks like on a keyboard of an actual piano. The 3 songs I said were Irish. The first one is I Am Looking Over a 4-Leaf Clover. I will play it, the whole thing, both hands in the key of C. Probably mess it up badly because it's not a regular song for me. But I will always be in the key of C because you'll ultimately know why, just because there's no sharps and flats. But first I'll play it with the melody in my right hand and the chords in my left hand, and I'll play it pretty simply. Then I'll play the melody alone with my right hand, or at least a substantial part of it. Then I will play the melody, and this is my invention of thumping out the beats. And thumping out the beats I will have to do with my left hand. And thumping out the beats will look like this because I'm Looking Over a 4-Leaf Clover is written in 4/4 time. So when I do that, my pinky will be the first beat, then the second beat, then the middle finger is the third beat, then the index finger is the fourth beat, and my thumb will uselessly hang down from there. So you would count it 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. I have practiced this for quite a while. I started out practicing trying to do it and counting out loud while I played it and thumped it and countered it, and I discovered that I couldn't do it. I can only do so many things at once. And so I gave up trying to count and thump at the same time. So I went back to just playing and thumping, and I managed to screw that up so many times, I'm not sure how badly I'm going to do it, but what I'll try to do is, if I screw it up with my thumping, I'm not going to go back to the beginning. I'm going to start over, but I'll give you a quick count so that I'm in the same place count-wise, because I'm going to make you count it when we get done with this exercise. After I play it, the melody alone, and thump out the beats with my left hand. I'm going to do it again, and I want you to count the beats 1, 2, 3, 4 out loud. The song's in 1/4 time, so you just keep counting to 4 over and over and over again. I hope you don't have trouble with that. If you do, it'll be because I messed it up. The first note of this music and the lyric starts on the very first beat of the first measure. And we'll get to that as soon as I play it, the simple both hand version of it. I'm going to start up here, which is higher. I'm looking over a 4-leaf clover in the key of C, fairly simplified version of it. Now here's the melody alone. All of these songs end on 1, which is kind of interesting. I have no idea why that's the case, but you'll hear it when I get to the end of each one of them. Now, I'm going to thump it out. I'm going to try like mad. I don't know why it's so hard, but like I said, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. You can see my fingers and you can see the music, the piano keys. So I want you to count with me using those same fingers, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, and count out loud so that it's really sort of pounded into your memory, thumped into your memory, and learned by doing. I'll do it myself the first time, so I'm not intimidated by the fact that I'm going to mess everybody up the first time. And here's the way the song goes, I hope. 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. Now, this time you counted out loud with me. I screwed it up like I told you I would, but maybe I'll make it through without doing that. And here's the same song. But you count out loud, loud and clear, 1, 2, 3, 4. And don't worry about my hearing because I can't hear you. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1. 1, 2, 3, 4. 4. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1. I don't know why it wants to end on that, but maybe that's just me. It just ends on the first beat of a measure. That is exactly how you count. As time goes by, probably 90% of the music you learn, and then you create your own version. When you're really playing by ear at that point, that's exactly how you count 4/4 time. And that's a lot of songs. And it's also an example of a song where the music starts on the very first beat, the 1, the first beat of that first measure of the song. Now I will play an Irish song, which is actually a lullaby, and it's in 3/4 time when the first note of the song, first note of the lyrics, the first note of the music, all are on the first beat of the first measure. And this one is a little more obscure than the last. It's actually technically an Irish lullaby, and the title is Tura Lura Lura. I'll play it in both keys. I'm sorry, with both hands. There's only one key. We're going to play in the key of C. And then we'll go through the same process I just did. So here's what the basically simplified version of Tura Lura Lura is. The important 2 things to remember is, number 1, it's in 3/4 time, that's waltz time. And secondly, the music starts actually on the very first beat. Here's how it goes. It should have sounded different to you the 2 times, because the first time was absolutely basic chords. The second time, our chords, I don't think I learned them anywhere. I just know that they fit beautifully into that melody, and so I insert them. And that's where the creation comes in, and that's what you will learn yourself. You will teach yourself to do that, and you will do it enough that you can start doing exactly what I just did. And that's the joy of doing this. So now I will play just the melody. Watch. I hope you weren't watching my fingering on that, because I did an extremely imperfect job of doing that. Now I'm going to count it out, except this time, instead of my pinky, the middle finger is the thumb, the index finger is the second beat of the measure, and the first beat of the measure is my middle finger, the second beat is my index finger, and the third beat is my thumb, and these fourth and fifth fingers just dangle and do nothing. And I'll try to get this right. 1, 2, 3. Remember, this starts on the first note of the first measure. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. Okay, this one is When Irish Eyes Are Smiling. It's in 3/4 time, waltz time, just like I just did. What makes this one unique, and I showed you the sheet that goes with this, where it started out in the first measure had 2 rest signs, and then the first note, and then it went on from there. And I actually put the words, when Irish eyes are smiling, so on and so forth. So what makes this unique is that the song actually starts on the 3rd or last beat of the first measure. And here's what it sounds like on the piano. That's what it sounds like badly played on the piano. My apologies, but I don't want to go back and do this again. So here's what the melody is like with the treble clef, right hand only. I did that in about perfect. Now I will do it probably very imperfectly because I have to thump. And remember that my middle finger is the first beat, my index finger is the second beat, and my thumb is the third beat. And I'll do it alone the first time, so maybe I have half a chance of getting it right the second time. You don't have to count the first one. But what's very important is that you notice that the music, the lyrics, the written music, the musical notes on the piano, and the lyrics all start on the third beat. That's the last beat of the first measure. It's the last beat because there's 3 beats in a measure. So you count 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. Ended in 1 again. Don't ask me why. Now, I want you to thump with me. I want you to count it loud. But I want you to count it, and I want you to count 1 with my middle finger, 2 with my index finger, 3 with my thumb, over and over and over again through the whole song. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. Screwed that up again. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2. Now, the irony of this is that normally when I play that song, what I'm doing with my left hand is extremely complicated because that's where the chords substantially are located, is in the left hand. I don't know why I'm having such a terrible time just thumping out up here on the top of the piano, when down here I would... That's a lot harder than this, but I guess I failed you, and I apologize. What can I say? So that's an example of the song that's counted 3 beats to a measure, waltz time, using the rest symbols that you saw on the last sheet. And counted in that way. One of the things you need to understand, that all the rules, all these symbols, particularly the rules of counting and things, that sort of thing, are entirely independent of what key you're playing in. And what key you're playing in, as I said, is incredibly important, because I play everything in the key of C that I possibly can, because I have a pretty vast repertoire of chords that I know in the key of C. I know them quite well. If I go to a different key, they are the exact same chord. They are the exact same pattern of half steps and whole steps between each note, but they're totally different keys on the keyboard. So a simple F chord, which is that, it's all white keys, except this is flat. Let's use C. That's a C chord, and it's a C scale, all white keys. That same chord in F sharp, which I call F sharp, but I won't call it G flat, uses all the 3 of the black keys at least. And all the chords that go with that song are equally, totally unique, because you're in a different key. So if you can try to get everything into the key of C, and you will find a way, because I've had to find a way, and I've struggled quite a lot with some songs. Just even though it's one note at a time stuff, it still takes a lot of effort to it's called transposing from one key to another. So if I had to learn a song that was written in F sharp, and I had to transpose it to C, I have a lot of work to do, and I'll do the work, because I want to learn that song in C, because then I've got a whole bag of chords that I don't have to look up, how to play them. And there's an awful lot of chords laying around out there. So, and if it's in 4/4 time, it doesn't matter what key you're in, the same rules apply. Like in 4/4 time, the first note of the first measure could be silent, could be a rest, a quarter note rest, or it could be a half note rest, or it could be a half note and a quarter note, which is how they tie together to make 3 of a rest. Remember, if you're doing a note for 3 beats, it's a half note plus a dot. But if you're doing a rest, all you can do is do the half rest and tie it with that underlying thing, that loop, to the next rest, which would be the quarter rest. So you've got a half rest and a quarter rest, and that's 3 beats. And any one of those, the song could start in that way, or it could be played in that way. The most important thing that you need to remember is that all of this, even dealing with the symbols, you're going to be doing one note at a time. Even learning the chords is going to be one note at a time. If you remember back to the first sheet I showed you, no, not the first, it was the third. There was the chart of scales for C and the sharps. At the very end of the staff, there were 3 notes together that was the C major chord. And it showed not only the notes, but it also showed the finger numbers that you use to play that chord. You're going to learn the chord one note at a time. And I don't know how to make it any easier. I've shown you just about everything I know, and I don't think it's that hard. It's tedious. Just learning the scales is tedious. But there's no technology that's going to get you anywhere in this that I can think of. It's just, you have to just do it because you want to reach the point where you can at least do what I do and maybe even go beyond that. But we are at the point now where there's the principal things that remain to be learned, and the most important is the chords that go with every single note of a melody. And then I'll take a shot at trying to tell you how to transpose things so you can finally get them in the key of C. If they're simple enough, you can read them in whatever key they're written in on the simple music that I will refer you to, until you've basically memorized it, because it's a very simple song. Could be 3 Blind Mice as far as I'm concerned. And once you have it memorized in some weird key, you can, using your ear, turn it into a key of C and make it very simple to play. And then you can take 3 Blind Mice and turn it into something rather impressive. The songs that I played had a variety of chords in them. In the average chord book, there are a minimum of roughly 460 chords that they show you every single note in the treble clef that you can learn one note at a time just by looking at the music and playing what they tell you to play. Out of that 460, I've already selected 32 chords. That's it. And every song I played, to demonstrate how to count time, every chord that was in those songs are within the 32 that I have selected. So the 32 will last you for years in terms of having to know them just by seeing the symbol for them, like a D7. So let's say it's C6. Ultimately, you will need to learn that these notes are a C6. Now that doesn't take a magician to figure that out, because if you look at the scale, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. It's a major C chord plus the sixth note. And so it's written as C6. And that's why I think ultimately it makes such a huge difference in your ability to make music. And it's such a giant step, and it's not that hard. And I think you'll enjoy it. So every song that I played today, those 32 chords covered them all. And once you learn those, and as what little I can teach you about transposing them to C, you'll be done. That's all I can show you. You'll have every tool in your bag that I have in my bag. And I think it essentially will offer you, if you want to work at it, you will be able to do all of your own arrangements to every song that you want or love or choose, and spend the rest of your life creating music and having a wonderful time in the process. So tune in for the next session, which will start on the subject of chords, unless I left something out and squeeze it in before I get to the chords. Thank you.